The Grim Reaper, also known as the Reaper, is one of the many personified versions of death. The being was heavily used during the medieval period and came to symbolize death as well as a fear of the unknown. Today the Grim Reaper remains the most recognized omni-neutral death deity of all time. Although the entity is not a true deity, rather, it is a symbolic representation. The concept of death as a personified being is timeless, being as old as time itself. However, the specific idea incorporating a grim figure of a hooded skeleton carrying a scythe was not very evident until the medieval period. During a time where morality was seen as pivotal to society and fear of the unknown was high, it was perhaps unsurprising that life's greatest mystery, death, would come to be viewed in the medieval mind as frightening and ever-present in theory. The ghostly phantom of death became known in time as the Grim Reaper, and although a neutral force, was just as feared in the past as it is today. However, today the Grim Reaper is viewed a needed being, just as death is necessary to keep humanity from overpopulation. The Grim Reaper was seen as a collector of souls, the messenger of the dead and most important of every guide that came to all mortals. It was not the Grim Reaper's place to judge souls, nor was it the entity's role to aid or hinder mortal affairs. Put simply, the Grim Reaper's task was to appear to the dying and guide them to their final destination, where they would be judged accordingly by higher powers. Although the Grim Reaper normally comes to those already dying, it has been noted that on rare occasions the Grim Reaper has the power to kill someone, though the entity occasionally does this out of malice. Due to the Grim Reaper appearing in a vaguely human form, there are many tales in which the entity can be tricked or bribed into freeing a person, which is where the phrase, cheating death, likely came from. However, for the most part, the Grim Reaper was seen as unable to be reasoned with and an inevitable part of being human. In biblical terms, the Grim Reaper is one of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, under the name, death. Unlike earlier personifications of death, the Grim Reaper has a ghoulish appearance that has made him a favorite Halloween costume for generations. The Reaper's look starts with a long, black cloak. The cloak wraps all the way around the specter's body and shrouds his face beneath a deep hood. It is usually loose and tattered, so that bits of black flutter in the wind as the Reaper moves. In his hand, the Reaper carries a scythe, a long pole with a curved blade fixed to the top. The scythe is traditionally used to harvest crops at the end of fall. In the Reaper's case, it is used to harvest souls at the end of life. The specter might also carry an hourglass, which he uses to measure the amount of time left in a life. Finally, he may travel on the back of a ghostly white horse or in a chariot pulled by white horses. Few people have glimpsed the figure beneath the black cloak and lived to tell the tale. Most legends paint the Reaper as a skeleton, white bones and an empty skull, but a few claim that nothing but a dark void lurks beneath the cloak. The Grim Reaper's appearance might send a chill down your spine, but he's not as evil as he looks. Above all else, the Reaper is a hard worker. His job is to collect souls when they reach the end of their time on Earth, and he is extremely diligent about getting his work done. He always meets his deadlines, and he is rarely distracted from or persuaded not to do his job. Some people might think that the Reaper, like an assassin, is despicable because he lives without so much as a flinch. But there's an important difference. Assassins kill people without caring about their fate. The Reaper kills people because it is their fate to die. In many ways, his work is beneficial. He ends suffering for people who are old or sick, and he prevents overpopulation. Personifications of death exist in all cultures, throughout all of recorded history. Ancient people took a friendlier approach to death. For example, Thanatos, the Greek god of death, was an attractive and noble-hearted young man, and the Valkyries, who decided which Norse soldiers should die in battle, were beautiful and heroic women. The turning point in our attitude towards death came in the 14th century, when Europe was ravaged by the Black Plague. In some cities, as many as 1 in 5 people died from the plague. Decaying bodies piled up in the streets, and everyone had loved ones to grieve. During the plague, artists began painting death as a horrific figure. Skeletons, armed with deadly weapons, danced among plague victims in the street or rode white horses with wagons full of bodies attached. Eventually, a black-cloaked figure, the first recognizable Reaper, began appearing at the head of these ghastly processions. His dark costume and curved scythe may have been inspired by plague doctors, who wore dark shrouds and bird-like masks to protect themselves from breathing infected air. The name Grim Reaper didn't appear until the 19th century, although the Grim was a popular nickname for death dating all the way back to the 13th century. The Dance of Death, or Danse Macabre, in French, was a medieval allegory on how death unites all people, regardless of age or social status. It was shown as a gruesome spectacle in which the Grim Reaper summons a host of dead spirits to dance along their graves. Popular figures in this dance were a pope, an emperor, a king, a youngster, and a laborer, chosen to remind the audience of the time that death was a truly universal concept and no man or woman was safe from its embrace. It was also used by the religious medieval people to highlight the foolishness of people who valued earthly possessions. The Danse Macabre was represented on countless forms of arts, first as theater plays and poems, then numerous wall paintings and drawings, mostly since the 15th century. In these times, the sheer number of deaths due to wars, famine, and plagues, associated with 3 of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, made a strong impact on people's minds, causing many reflection on the true value of life. This medieval scene was also paralleled in a French superstition that stated that the Grim Reaper would rise every Halloween at a cemetery on the witching hour, midnight. Once there, the entity would play a fiddle and summon the skeletons or ghosts of all the dead to dance until the rising sun forced them to retreat back to the grave. This legend was the inspiration for a poem by Henri Cassalis, also known as the Danse Macabre, which was made into a musical piece by the French composer Camille Saint-Saëns in 1874. Saint-Saëns' friend Franz Liszt later adapted it for piano alone. The Danse Macabre music is now extremely famous worldwide and used in many death-themed works, being now used as a theme tune of some sort to the Grim Reaper and Ghosts gatherings. The Grim Reaper is a stock character in popular culture, appearing in countless media ranging from television and radio to comic books and novels. He is sometimes shown with an axe rather than a scythe, The Grim Reaper is also the main antagonist of the horror film series Final Destination and is simply named Death. He is portrayed to be a malevolent force with a sinister plan to end the lives of a specific group of people who have survived a disaster that one of the group members predicts via a premonition, rather than being portrayed as a neutral force that takes lives when it is necessary. In the comic strip Bug-A-Boo, a female version of the character, Donna Morte, shows up as a friend of Penadino.